Welcome back to Sweet Yellow House. We are back and ready to go, and just a reminder to go over and join our Patreon family. So let's get started. So project one is going to be some cute little letters that I got at the Target $1 spot, I believe, last year around Christmas time. So I'm going to start off with my paper clay and some random molds. I just picked what I thought was interesting and would look good on the letters. So you've seen me do this 100 times. I just warm up the mold, the clay, and use that and put it in my mold and make my shapes. I didn't put any of these in the freezer this time. They seem to come out pretty easy for me. So I'm just gonna make a bunch of random molds, and so that I can just mix and match over the letters and just use what I have. I also went into my stash and kind of used some that I had made from other projects. So once I get them to a place that I feel that I'm happy and I like them, I go ahead and glue those down with my Type Bond glue, and I'm just using my finger and spreading that around the back and placing those down. I'm not doing anything special. I'm not squishing them down. These are kind of like press board letters and shapes, so they adhere to that really well. You can use any kind of glue you want, but I always seem to use Type Bond or the Gorilla Clear glue, but I like the Type Bond really well. So I'm just making random things that I think will look good, and I'm just putting those down and using a little plastic knife to cut back what I don't need. And I think I started using an X-Acto knife here because it made a smoother cut for me, so that's why you see it's changed. So I'm just putting those down and gluing them into place, and once I get all situated with that and get all that done, then I just put them aside and I let those dry. Once those are dry, I'm going to go in and grab some of my DIY paint. I believe I have Salty Kiss and Marquee and Bohemian Blue, and I added some baking soda to that, and I just mixed up some colors that I felt like I wanted to put on here, and just started to paint away. The reason that I really love the baking soda in there, because sometimes you get cracks in your clay and stuff like that, and it just kind of helps cover all of that stuff over. So it gives you a little bit more of a rustic finish, but also a better finish, not having so many cracks and things like that in there. So I just go ahead and paint my ornaments, I guess, for lack of a better word, and let those dry. Once those dry, I take some clear and white wax, and I always have a little jar where they're mixed together, and I don't want a solid white wax. I just feel like it would just be too much, so that's why I kind of tone it down with the clear wax to kind of spread it out just a little bit. So I go over the ornaments and then wipe it back. So as soon as I get it done, I wipe it back just so I can get it off easier. So once those have dried a little bit, I go in with my gilding wax and I just highlight the tops of those just to bring out the detail in all of the molds with that. So after I got all of those done, I just want to kind of test out a couple of different ideas on how to use this. I put some clips on the back. I think I added a chain to one to hang on a wall. I put one on a plaque that you see here. I just got this little plaque from the dollar store, and I used my antiquing wax that was watered down, and I just went over it, and then I glued one of the letters to that with the Gorilla Clear glue. And you can use these things for anything really. You can put clips on them and clip them into flower arrangements, or use them as a paper clip, or you can put a chain on them or a ribbon through them and hang them on the wall, you know, a kid's door, or you can make a bunch of them to spell out a word and use that on a long plaque to make a sign, which would be really pretty. So I'm really happy how these turned out. I think they would make really great gifts. So project 2, here is my inspiration piece. I was really hesitant on this project only because I had never used the IOD paint inlays, and I just wasn't really sure what I was gonna how I was gonna do with that. But I had this old sign that I had painted over at some point and just kind of forgot about it. So I'm using this cool little tool that is actually for dusting like fondant molds, but I use it for this. So I decided on using the olive crest IOD mold, and I just went ahead and made a bunch of different molds out of here just to kind of see what I want. And as I'm going, I'm just arranging. So once I get it to a point where I'm happy, I go ahead and glue those down and I let it dry for a couple of hours. Once that's dry, I go in with my Rust-Oleum white linen and I add some baking soda to that. And again, because I want this sign to look really antique, so I want it to have a lot of texture also too, to kind of hide any cracks that come into that mold. So I go over there with that and I let that dry. Once that's dry, I go in and I get my Chateau IOD paint inlay, and here I'm just kind of picking out what I think I want. I'm only going to use a couple of pieces of this, so I'm just trying to figure out what part of this would look good. So once I decided on that, I go ahead and I'm just kind of looking at it to see, you know, because you have to cut off the edge to make sure that it lines up. So I got my linen white without any baking soda, and I mark my inlay just to make sure I place it right once I get it down. And I'm going to do one half first and then the other half, just because I have two pieces because this sign is a little bit long. I go and I put the paint on there, and I'm putting it over the mold. I want that inlay to transfer some of that paint over the molds as well. So I'm just painting over everything, and I'm not really sure, honestly, like how thick this is going to be. But even if there's a lot of texture there, I'm okay with that because I want it to look really textured and antique. So I lay that down and get it into place. And I missed it pretty well, only because I want that backing paper to give over those molds to kind of, you know, mold around. I want the paper to mold around those castings, so that way it kind of wraps around it. And by wetting the paper, you have a little bit more control to push those kind of down and over it without ripping the paper apart. So I get the other side painted and the inlay placed over, and I'm just lining it up. And I have to say it was fairly easy because it has the grid on the back, so I was happy that I was able to do it fairly easily. I was kind of worried about getting it lined up just right, so I missed that pretty heavily. And with a really saturated paper towel, I'm just kind of going over it, like I said, to get that paper to mold around the castings that I have glued down there. So once I get that where I want it, I set it aside and I let it dry completely. So once it's dry, you can go back. I missed it, not a whole lot, but enough. If I felt some resistance, you'll see here, I went ahead and missed it again, and it pulled up fairly easy. So I was pretty happy with this. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, and I loved the way that it turned out. And the colors are just really great, and it just gives that really nice look. So I have to seal this because I'm doing other things on top of it. So I took some Big Top And I have this little spray bottle because you don't want to brush anything over this because it'll reactivate that paint and it'll start to smear on you. So you want to spray your sealant over it. But I put half in this bottle, half a big top and half water, and I just shook it, and then I used that little sprayer to spray over the top, and I gave it a really good coat. I sprayed it a lot so that it would have a really nice coat to make sure that none of that was going to smear around once I started doing my other stuff to it. So I set that aside and I let it dry really well, and then I got my IOD letter stamps here, and I have a new ink pad and I have some black ink. So I just went ahead and placed my stamps on a thin mount. I'm spelling out the word antique, and so this also too was the first time I've ever used these particular stamps. So it was a brand new set, so I had to go in and sand the tops of those so that the ink would stick to it. So here I'm just sanding, and then once I get done with that, I'm going to ink up my pad. I really like these ink pads because they're raised, so you can just actually use them to kind of ink your stamps and stuff, and they're really easy to ink and to re-ink, and they soak up the ink really well, so you're not like left with the dripping mess all over the place. So I really like those, so I just inked it, and I'm setting this down, and I'm kind of nervous because I'm short, so seeing over the top of things is not easy to make sure that you have a really good placement. So once I get that down, I hold it into place with one hand, and with the other hand I just go through and I press each letter to make sure that I have good placement on there. So once I have that down, I let it dry for about 10 minutes, and then I go back to my spray bottle with that half and half, and I give it a good spraying because I am going to do another treatment on top of that, and I don't want it to smear that black ink all over the place. So I go in and I let that dry, and I have some birds left over from an earlier project, and I'm just gonna antique wax those with my antiquing wax and my half water, half antiquing wax, and I just go over and then I gild those a little bit. So I place those aside, and now what I'm doing is with that same half and half antiquing wax mixture and water, I'm going over the sign to give it a more antique look, because I did use really white paint and it was pretty stark, and then to just kind of meld everything together. So I grab my glue gun and my Titebond, and what I'm doing is the glue gun is for really fast adhesion, and the Titebond is for a long time adhesion on there. So that's why I'm using both. I like to use both just because sometimes, you know, when you need a project to get done fast, you need that glue to be set up so you can take photos like this, for instance. So hopefully you like those. I think it came out really well, and I'm really happy with it. And now that I've used the inlays, I probably will be using them a lot more. So just a quick announcement, our new series starts this Tuesday. We're going to upload every other Tuesday, and there'll be 5 projects in that series, and these are going to be like for bigger home, adding custom touches to your home. So project 3 is this big urn that I had. I've had this for over 10 years, I would say, and it's seen better days. It has big cracks on it from it being outside, so I thought, well, I'll fix it up and use it inside for faux arrangements and things like that. So here it is, that little duster again. I just love this, and you could get it at the craft stores and stuff in the like cake decorating section. So I used some IOD molds that I think that I would like, and that seemed to fit kind of that urn look, and looks a lot like my inspiration piece. And I just make a bunch of molds. I'm not really sure at this point what I'm gonna do. I just know that I like the way that these look, and my main objective for this is to cover up those big cracks in the urn. So I'm just strategically putting these down to cover up the crack as much as I can, and I'm using my Titebond to glue those down. Once I have those all glued down, I let them dry completely, and now I'm going to go in and I'm going to kind of reinforce that crack, because it seems like I've just, from moving it around, like I can feel some movement in there, and I didn't want it to crack any further. So I used my syringe trick, and I filled it with my Titebond glue, and I put a really small needle tip on there so that I could get inside of that crack with that. And I'm going to use that to squirt glue right inside the crack, so that it can kind of seal that up and give it a little strength to hold it together better. And also to just, you know, so that nothing kind of gets in there, or you know, anything like that. I did use this at one time for real plants, and that's probably why it cracked, because it was outside and wet and the heat and all of that. So I don't think it was made for that. But I'm also going to use that to go around the molds to seal up any of those cracks that might have developed there. So once that's all dried, I got my old school DIY paint, and I'm mixing in some salt wash in there. And I'm just going to put it in my container, because I'm at the end of this, and I didn't see the point of putting it in a different container. Just, you know, so I just used this. I didn't mix it too thickly, but is thickly a word? I don't know. Too thick, because I want it to kind of get into the molds. And also too, the urn has so much texture already, and I wasn't careful about how I put it on there. I just kind of slapped it on there, but to make sure that I got every white piece of the molds covered. So I went back with my mixture of the clear and white wax, and I'm gonna go in with a kind of a damp paper towel, just so I can move that wax around. And I'm just taking a really soft brush, and I'm brushing that all into the crevices of the molds, the castings that I have here. So I'm just working that in really well and wiping it back, and I'm going over the whole urn, even the parts that don't have molds glued to them, only because, like I said, this has so much texture, and I wanted to kind of bring all of that back since I had covered it up. I got this rust kind of paint, and it's textured, almost has like a sandy texture to it, and I wanted to kind of give it a look like having some rust. I'm not sure I'm too happy with it. You know, it's like I look at it one time and it looks good, and I look at it another time and I'm not really sure. I might go back and put a little more. It just seems a little, maybe I washed it out too much and it looks more pink to my eye for some reason. So I might just add a little more to bring out more of that orange. So once that was dried, I grabbed my mixture of antiquing wax and water, and I just went over it to kind of give it that aged look. When you want something aged, just layer, 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 and then layer some more, and then when you think you're done, put another layer on it. Because that's really when things are old and set out, that's what it's about. It's all about the layering. So this is how that came out, and I'm pretty happy with it, like I said, but I might go back and add some more of that rust textured paint to it. So, but I think it looks really pretty. I'm looking forward to putting some arrangements in this. So project 4 is this piece. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but I wasn't quite sure how I was going to tackle that. So I got this little urn thing at the Goodwill, and it had a bunch of other like faux flowers in it, so I just ripped everything out, but I left the foam inside. And I have this grapevine wreath, and I wanted to cut a complete circle out of there, so you want to make sure that you have a complete circle cut. And then once you get that cut, you want to divide those in half. So here you see I'm just dividing those out. Any pieces that break off, I'm just putting those aside because I'm going to use them as well. But so you have one side open, and what you want to do is you want to crisscross those so they make a little sphere, you know, type thing. So you just crisscross them. And then what I did was I put these down, and then I used U floral pins, or I think they're called, and I just pushed those down into the foam and got them placed basically where I wanted them. And once I got those placed down, I took my glue gun and just then tacked those into place with glue. So I got this sheet moss that I've had for a really long time, and I grabbed my glue gun again, and I went in and I covered that whole bottom with this sheet moss. I love the color of this moss. Like, it just is so rich and textured and varied in color, and it's just gorgeous. I love that color green. It's just so vibrant, but at the same time so earthy. So I love it. So I used that, and I covered everything and kind of went up the sides of those branches there, and glued everything into place. And once I got all of that into place where I wanted it, I went ahead and I grabbed a bunch of florals and things that I thought that I wanted to put in there, and I'm just kind of mixing and matching. I want it to be like kind of like at any time of year, but really I'm making this specifically for my entryway for fall. So I added a bird and a cute little nest, and I added a small pumpkin, and the pumpkin and the leaves I can kind of change out. I didn't glue those down, so I can put, you know, other things in here and kind of change it out with the seasons if I wanted. But I was really happy with this. I thought it came out so cute, and I love the little bird with the pumpkin, and it looks like he's in a little nest, and it's adorable. So I'm super happy. So I am super excited to be back, and I have so many things going, and I'm just excited to kind of put those out every week. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you spending your time with me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you Tuesday.